Hello. In today's tutorial, I want to show you how you can use tarot to engage more deeply with the archetypes in your natal chart. So the emphasis here is on the archetypes and how you can use tarot and of a particular kind tarot to deepen, like really deepen and broaden your engagement, your understanding of your story, archetypal, mythical story that only you are living the way your chart is set. So I will be talking about a particular tarot deck and a particular oracle deck because I feel they, in my experience, they lend themselves so beautifully to this kind of exploration of astrology and your natal chart, but also, and more importantly, of the archetypes and the mythology of our hero's journey that we all are on. But what I want to say before I go into any of this, that I'm no tarot specialist, as in I only do it for myself, I only read for myself. I mean, I'm an absolute lover of tarot and oracle decks. I love the visual storytelling, and I'm always so deeply drawn to the artwork. That's why I pick certain tarot, not for any other reason. But except with the exception of this particular deck, and I'll talk about in a moment what it is. And so, like I say, I'll talk about the deck and the whole thing about archetypes and mythology and how that's helpful for our astrological study of our chart. And at the end, I will offer my spread that you can do. It's inspired by someone, as a tarot reader that I follow, or tarot enthusiast and lover that I follow on YouTube. I'll link a video down below. But it's my take on it because it's very much moon phases based. And I find it just so rich and deep, as just all of this tarot practice that I will, with these two decks in particular, that I will talk about in a moment. So the two decks I'm recommending, or highly recommend, are the Mythic Tarot by Liz Green. She's the writer, and Liz Green is one of the, highly esteemed and certainly, I read most of her books, not all, but most of her books. She's an astrologer, basically a famous astrologer, if you like. She's behind the Astro.com. Her and Robert Hand are the kind of two biggest astrology influences or writers, I think, behind or creators behind the Astro.com content. Certainly the long handwriting and various reports as well. So Liz Green. So this is the first tarot I ever bought before even Rider-Waite, because of her astrological connection, because she's an astrologer, and because I wanted to connect the two basically. And so this is the book that is absolutely, if you want to get just a book, you'd be well set to work with any other tarot deck, Rider-Waite or any other tarot deck. I mean, it wouldn't be necessarily the storylines, or in fact, they won't be, but the essence, the core of the meanings of the suits and of the major arcana, minor arcana, are just so deeply entrenched in this. They're soaked. The meanings of those suits and those cards are soaked in this particular book, even though it's talking about different stories that probably no other deck does, at least not to my knowledge. And this is the actual deck. Now, this is sadly the front image of the presentation is the original artwork, which is just beautiful. I mean, it's that kind of old school, sort of idyllic, but a bit mythical. I just love it. I love it, but that's not the deck I was able to get hold of. This is a new version. It's okay, but it's nothing like the original. So if you can get the original, I'd highly recommend, if you can afford it or even find it. But otherwise, this will do just for the purpose of studying your chart and just getting really deep and down and dirty with the archetypes and the stories that you live out in your life. And then the perfect accompanying oracle is the, surprise, surprise, Mythic Oracle. Sorry, I just want to keep checking that I'm actually recording after one of the faux pas recently I had. So Mythic Oracle by Carisa Mellado, artwork by Michelle Lee Fallon, I think. Wisdom of the Ancient Greek Pantheon. And these are myths, again, mythical cards, meaning, mythic, the gods, basically, of Pantheon. And as she puts it, let me just get her book quickly. So in her book, she has divided the cards into what she calls protogenoi, which is like the mother, father, the unknown, and the rebirth. Like in the beginning, there was the word, that at the very, very beginning of the myths and the kind of the pantheon life, and then Titans, and then Olympians, which are the kind of the classic gods that we know. So under Titans, she has Saturn, Rhea, Prometheus, Mnemosyne, Atlas, Themis, Selene, Helios, Eos. And then under Olympians, she has the Zeus, Demeter, Demeter, Hera, Hades. I'm sorry, I don't really know how to pronounce this in English. Poseidon, Artemis, Apollo, etc. And then she has magical beings where we have Chiron, Pandora, the Fates, Hecate, and Thanatos. And then heroes, which is Achilles, Orpheus, Odyssey, Heracles, Perseus, Helen of Troy, Psyche, and Bellerophon. And all of these are, in one way or another, woven into the stories of the tarot deck. So it's such a beautiful, beautiful way to combine the two. And I'll show you when I talk about the actual spreads. Well, one spread really, but it's kind of 4-part because there are 4 moon phases that we're doing the spread for. You'll see what I mean by that. And it just plays out such a rich story, if you want a rich story. Now, in a moment, I want to read out a few things from the Mythic Tarot book by Liz Green. I mean, as I said. But before that, I just want to explain why I think this particular deck is really potent, like the richest, the most packed with power reading, the depth, so comprehensive, so profoundly comprehensive, comprehensive than any other that I've come across. And okay, I've only been in this game for about 2 years, maybe a bit longer, but if anyone knows me personally, I go full hog whenever I start something. So I have about, how many decks? Well, not many. I have about 20. So I don't know, maybe that's a lot, maybe that's not. I know people with far more, and obviously less. Anyway, but my point is, archetypes are, in any deck, there will be archetypes. And there will be mythology of sorts. So there's like a druid deck. There are different mythologies. So there is like Native Americans, and they're all kind of different stories. But as my understanding, and in all the years that I studied astrology, really the archetypes and the myths behind the Western astrology, so the one I use, and the one I talk about here, is rooted and steeped in the Greek myths. So that's kind of why those kind of Greek archetypes, which are, archetypes are, and I'm going to talk in a moment about that. But the connection here between this deck and the astrology as I practice it is exactly in the fact that it's Greek mythology. So that's the key. That's one key of the keys. The second is that in other decks, maybe, at least, like I say, in my kind of view of them, as I experienced them and read them, it's more about archetypes, or if it's stories, there are stories that I'm not that familiar with, and the books don't seem to necessarily tell you a story in each card, like how one card leads to another. The only other kind of way that I've where I saw that and studied it myself is in Rider-Waite, which is kind of as generic, kind of, in a sense, archetypal journey of the Fool, and then the suits as well, as you can get it, like generic as in elemental, as in basic, and yet therefore stripped of all the frills, if you like, hence being the kind of the main one where you start with the Rider-Waite deck. But other than that, in my experience, decks are typically just archetypes without the story that goes from this card 0 to 21, sorry, and then through all the suits as it goes from the ace to the king, or the 10 and then to the king, from the page to the king. So there's no actual clear storyline, is my point. At least not so detailed and not so in depth described as in this particular deck of the Greek myth, as in Mythic Tarot. Now, so those archetypes that you will find in other tarot cards or oracles are archetypes, like I say. So the lack of that clear storyline or dense, really rich storyline narrative is where I feel they fall short, because they kind of leave a lot of room for interpretation, which is wonderful. In any other way, that would be wonderful in my books as well. But if you kind of really want to get nitty gritty, kind of like you look at a card and you go, okay, so this is love, I don't know, and then so love self, love this, love that. You can kind of, yes, you can expand, and there are many ways you can go with that card. But if you know the complexity of the story within that card, you can just get really pinpoint your own story within that is reflected in your life. So you get really specific. So if when you go for a reading and you want kind of answers that really gonna nail down to the specific of your life, you want those stories in the cards to be so rich that they give you a lot to reflect back to and from. And this one does that. So this is the difference between myth and archetype. Archetype is essentially a universal, archaic symbol or an idea or an image that is just a collective expression of the collective unconscious. It's like say love. That's it, one word, love. Where the myth is a social instruction. It's, if you want to put yourself and your reading in a context of your life and your relationships, starting with yourself, with material world, with your possessions, with your values, with any kind of relationship, right? You want to put yourself in the framework of the society and your conditioning and your bringing up. And so when you look at cards like the Mythic Tarot, every card has a story like she got up and then picked up a book and then went to buy something else and then had a coffee. I mean, I'm absolutely trivializing it. It's nothing like this, obviously, but I haven't got anything in front of me to read it. But the point is, there is such a rich story to every single card. And beautifully, each of these is not mundane. Even the suits are very much mythical, epic storylines. So I think I've made my point. In conclusion, I highly recommend you get this deck. They're quite cheap as well, both of them. They're not those fancy decks or whatever, if you can afford it, and so that you get their richness and move away from too much maybe vagueness and abstraction, which I'm all for. Like I say, I love it. But if you want to get really nitty-gritty detail of your stories at any given time as you pull those cards, this is the deck for you. So now let me read some beautiful passages from, as in by beautiful, she's just I love her writing as well, just so well written, by Liz Green in the Mythic Tarot. So this is a paragraph on Major Arcana. So the journey of the Major Arcana is really the journey of the Fool. Sorry, let me see if I'm recording this. So it's really the journey of the Fool, who is the first of the 22 images. We follow the Fool, and in some profound sense also are the Fool, as he emerges from the darkness of the maternal cave and leaps out into the unknown. We meet the fundamental experiences of childhood, the worldly parents and the inner parents of the spirit and the imagination, in the cards of the Magician, the Empress, the Emperor, the High Priestess, and the Hierophant. Now, these, if you remember, I said about the Mythic Oracle, has a similar structure of like the parents, although there are only 4 there and they don't necessarily correspond directly, but that would be just too neat and it's irrelevant, and it's still very much the combination and how this oracle supports this amazing deck is still phenomenal. So But you can see kind of the structure is already there because this is the mythical Greek mythology kind of structure. We recognize the conflicts and passions of the adolescents within us in the cards of the Lovers and the Chariot. We encounter the worldly tests and moral challenges of life in the cards of Justice, Temperance, Strength, and the Hermit. We pass through crisis and loss and the sudden blow of fate portrayed in the Wheel of Fortune, and suffer the helplessness and despair of the Hanged Man and Death. We follow the fool into confrontation with himself as the secret architect of his own fate in The Devil and the Tower. From this darkness, hope is born in the cards of the Star, the Moon, and the Sun, and victory over darkness and reconciliation with life come with the cards of Judgment and the World. The images of the major arcana are ancient and evocative symbols of life experiences which belong to our human condition and our human destiny. All the cards of the major arcana are rites of passage, stages of processes, rather than end results or static places within which do not change. Thus, at the end of the journey, the fool begins again, because whenever we feel we have reached the goal and achieved our designs, another deeper or higher goal emerges, so that every end is really a preparation for something else, and we begin the cycle again. And now on the topic of the minor arcana. The four suits of the tarot, symbolized by the cup, the wand, the sword, and the pentacle, are description in pictorial form of experiences in four different dimensions or spheres of life. Through the numbered cards, so from ace of any of them to the 10, we may glimpse the ordinary experiences of life which come to meet us through events, transactions with others, and through passing states of mind or feeling. And through the court cards, so the page, the knight, the queen, and the king, they embody character types or dimensions of a particular sphere of life which can be portrayed as human figures. Although they appear as a hierarchy, in reality they're equal in value, but their different degrees of worldly power indicates their different degrees of consolidation in the outer world. And just the last paragraph I want to read from her book by Liz. So this is all Liz Green's words. For the numbered cards, so this is ace of wands, 2 of wands, 3 of wands, up until 10. So that's the numbered cards, right? Of the suit of cups, we will consider the myth of Eros and Psyche, for this is an archetypal love story whose progress touches upon all of the main experiences we meet in relationship with others. For the numbered cards of the suit of wands, we will examine the myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece, for this is an archetypal story of adventure and the triumph of the creative imagination over the limitations of matter. Sorry, just checking I'm recording. The progress of this story touches upon all of the main experiences we meet during the effort to expand our lives creatively. For the numbered cards of the suit of swords, we will follow the myth of Orestes and the curse of the house of Atropos. Again, I'm not sure how this is pronounced in English. For this is an archetypal story of the uses and abuses of the mind and the conflicts, quarrels, and reconciliations which we encounter through our ethics, differing ethics and principles. And for the suit of pentacles, we will investigate the myth of Daedalus through the numbered cards, for this is an archetypal story of the fate of the spirit incarnated in imperfect flesh, and the development of skills and abilities in the world of form. So I don't know if you haven't already kind of clocked on to just hearing the last paragraph I read out. So each of the suits has such a rich myth behind it. And it blew my mind. I feel like he advanced because I started with that deck. He advanced me like to the level of a beginner to advanced, maybe, at least intermediate, within the first month of me, because I've read it back and back, because it's just a fantastic read. Just if you like reading myths, it's essentially what it is. And then I have pictures to look at as well. It's just great. Back to the childhood happy days. So each of these four myths is just, I mean, the Pentacles is just, it's amazing. It's like you can see that all the earth, like the Chiron, the devil, all the earthy hermit, all the other major arcana that are sort of earthy, earth element themselves are sort of played out not by characters necessarily in this. So it's just so rich. The love story of Eros and Psyche. It's like if any of you does tarot and does astrology for yourself and trying to understand your child because of your love problems, I would this is definitely the deck you wanna get, and the oracle. But if not, even just the deck is more than enough, or even just the book and read the journey of the suits of cups. The Psyche basically is the heroine in that storyline. And so if you're a female in particular, I would imagine this would appeal to you and you would recognize so much of it, and it's just beautiful. So like I say, and this is the minor arcana, which is apparently, well, not apparently, but it's the sort of, day-to-day life, as in it's not it's kind of how we encounter these archetypes in our daily interactions with others, or how our internal world is manifested outside. And in other words, it's kind of more mundane than major arcana, and yet it's so rich, like I said at the beginning, and I'm not want to repeat myself anymore. So the last thing I want to cover before I show you the spread and talk a little bit about the spread is that I have listed below, and I will send, there will be all kinds of descriptions, everything I talk about here, that you can use as a reference to get things yourself. And this will be also, it's like a longer list, basically in the description of the video. Basically, the major arcana cards in the Mythic Tarot are, as they are, starting with the Fool to all the way to the World. So it's the same, and it follows the sort of Rider-Waite structure, because the Justice is 11 card and the Strength. Oh no, actually, just realized that the other way around. Justice comes before Strength. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So there is, and I will actually reference this book below, which I have, but I have never. There are some cards that I kind of get why they are what the sort of traditional connection and correspondences by the sort of traditional tarot community or tarot world makes with the astrological signs and planets and astro archetypes, let's say. So I have a book, and I'll link into here the title and everything, if you're interested. But I have problems with that. Just kind of like, really? I mean, I can see some of it. Even when I have a problem, I can make myself see it. But I don't know. It never really. I just really don't. It kind of it messes up with my feel for tarot, and it doesn't intuitively sit well with me. But it might do with you. However, using the Mythic Tarot, even if you are very comfortable and at home with making those correspondences between major arcana cards, or even the suits to particular signs and planets and all that, I still say try this as a way of looking at the old story in a very new way, is what I'm saying. So just a quick rundown of those cards, and they're listed below. So the major arcana don't correspond to the traditional of the major arcana cards in the Mythic Tarot don't correspond to the traditional correspondences of astrological signs and planets. And a lot of the correspondences are to be found as asteroids in astrological terms. So I have also listed below the numbers, the asteroid numbers. So when you go into if you've been to my How to Create Your Own Chart, I show you where to add the identifying numbers of the asteroids you want to include in your chart and see where they are in your chart. So you can do that. Basically, you do that with the numbers I will have listed below. So I won't read out the numbers. I'll just quickly run through the list because I want to say a couple of things there that are interesting. So the Fool is Dionysos. I'm not sure how again you pronounce it. Magician is Mercury. Empress is Ceres. Emperor is Jupiter. High Priestess is Persephone asteroid. Hierophant is Chiron. I love that. Lovers, and this is the first one that's very, very interesting, and I love it. So it's the story of Paris, the judgment of Paris. This is where Aries comes into as well, even though she's not exactly, she's the cause of this. And the Helen of Troy. And Helen of Troy is actually in the Oracle, one of the cards. So the lovers have a whole storyline there. So if you pull that card, for instance, I would be looking at Juno, your placements of Juno, Pallas, Athene, Venus, Paris. It's an asteroid 3317. And I would look at Aries and Helen of Troy. No, Helen of Troy. I don't know about Helen of Troy. I'm pretty sure she hasn't got an asteroid. Well, you can look that up yourself. So this is the point. When you pull those cards, basically and all these like things I'm reading. So if you pull High Priestess, don't think of, I don't know, I think it's usually either Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces, I'm not sure, one of those water signs I think she's associated with typically. No, actually do find Persephone in your chart. And the Persephone is 399. And anyway, like I said, the list of numbers is below. And it will just open a new world. It will be like, whoa. It will be like, whoa. So if you pull the Lovers card, you have quite a lot to look at. So Juno, Pallas, Athena, Venus, and Paris, and Aries. And then Chariot is Mars, so it's not Cancer. That's one card I never really got. Just how's that Cancer? But anyway, I'm not even interested at this point. But anyway, so Chariot here is Mars. So look at Mars and Aries. If they're not the same thing in your chart, then look at both. Look at where your Mars is and look where your Aries is. Justice is Pallas Athena, so it's not Libra, even though Pallas Athena is associated with Libra, so there's that correspondence there. But Temperance is Iris. She's a female Mercury, so there's another really interesting correspondence there. So you can consider your Mercury, and that's once you read up, because Iris, for instance, is also in this oracle, Mythic Oracle. So you could pull her out. If you pull her out with Temperance, then you will definitely be kind of prompted on the myth. But the point is also, whenever you do this, you just kind of Google the mythology beyond even just what's written in the book. But yeah, so she's a female Mercury. There you go. So then Strength is Hercules. Hermit is Saturn. Wheel of Fortune is the Fates. And there are three of them. There are three Fates, Klotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. And they are all three asteroids, and I've given the numbers below. So you check all three of them, and they're very different placements. I mean, they may be conjunct in your chart, so that would be really interesting. In mine, they're not, for instance. It depends, how they move. And then Hanged Man is Prometheus asteroid. Death is Pluto, which is kind of, I think, everywhere. I think it is Scorpio, but this is Pluto. So if you pull a death card, look at Pluto. Devil is Pan, Pan. So also an asteroid. I've given you the number. Tower is Poseidon. So it's another asteroid. So don't look at Neptune, even though they're kind of the same, but look at Poseidon. That's my point, because all these are asteroids, and you can find them in your chart specifically. Or combine them, obviously, whatever you want to do, but do actually look at those very specific characters in this storyline, where they sit in your chart. The star is Pandora, the moon is Hecate, the sun is Apollo, judgment is Hermes Psychopomp. So this is a fascinating one. And so I would, in her book, I'm not going to read it out now, but it's essentially like a grown-up Hermes. And where at the beginning of the magician, we find him as a kid, or, well, it's not a kid, it's, so the book is therefore, like I say, phenomenally important. And the final card of the world is Hermaphroditus, but basically that's two characters, which is Eros. That's also part of the story with, is that Eros here? No, forgive me, that's something else I'm confusing with. So it's Eros and Anteros. So they're it's a myth, basically, how the Hermaphroditus happened. So there are two asteroids, and I've given you the numbers. So in conclusion, when you pull those cards, make sure you then stop, take notes of all those asteroids that each of those cards correspond to, or when they correspond to a clear planet that you already have in your chart, or even like Ceres or Chiron, which it's already there if you use astro.com. Then you kind of have to manually add those those asteroids, those numbers in that section below in the objects at the bottom of the astro.com page, and then see where they are, and then look at your chart from that perspective, and in the light of the story that you read in the book that comes with the deck, or even just like by Googling the myth. And now the spread. So basically, if you are someone who likes to draw cards and kind of, have rituals, or just sort of honor or follow rather what's happening to you as per the moon cycle, then this is a spread I would recommend. It's to try at least. Like I said at the beginning, it was inspired by another YouTuber who is, has a wonderful tarot channel, and I'll link her video below. But and hers is more generic, nothing to do with moon phases, at least the way I understand it. But I've adapted it to the moon phases, and so you basically pull a card from the deck, and as well, and a card from the oracle at each of these stages. So at the new moon, at the first quarter moon, at the full moon, and the last quarter moon. Now, why that? So because whatever wants to come forth as the question. So the question you want to ask at the new moon is, what wants to come forth? What wants to be birthed? What wants to come out? What wants to be nurtured to grow stronger? What new beginnings do I want to start? Any of these questions. I mean, any kind of new moon intentions type of whatever you ask yourself when you set intentions, if you do, could be this question for this the first spread. The first sort of, it's 8 card spread, and it's essentially 4 rows of 2 cards. That's what it is, as per each phase. So at this stage, like I say, that's the question, like what wants to come forth. And that's just to kind of get a sense of energies. It's especially if you're actually wondering what kind of intentions would be most aligned with yourself. So maybe you can ask it, even that way, what would be the most aligned intentions or to set for this new moon, with what would be the most aligned intentions for my highest good and highest good of everyone type of thing, to put forth for this new moon. And then you pull those 2 cards, like I say, and then it's about a week later. So then you have to obviously follow. There are apps. In fact, I will give you an app. I will give you a link for an app as well. I'm sure you can find any moon apps, basically moon calendar apps. So watch when the first quarter moon is, and then do the same. And the question is basically, so it's important because the question then is like, what action do you need to take now? And that's what's happening at the first quarter moon. Whatever it was brewing and budding, and you were nurturing, and you weren't even sure what it is, but you could just feel those stirrings, and you kind of followed it and just kind of didn't ask too many questions at the point of, but just kind of still nurtured it and held it, contained it well. By the time of the first quarter moon, you will want to put forth something will want to actually be kind of done about it. Something will want to come to light, as in you want to do something about whatever it was whatever you were doing whatever you were starting at the new moon. You want to take it to the next step, and it's that step where it becomes more public, where it becomes more, you can now speak about it, you can now actually show it to your friend or to even your following on whatever platform you use, or anything else in between. So it's like a first kind of visible activity for after that, for new moon. And then obviously the full moon a week or so later, again do the same, pull 2 cards, and you're stacking them up like this. So this is what that at Boho Tarot person I follow, like I say, she calls this waterfall I think spread, because of the way they're kind of lined down. And you don't have to overlap them, obviously. This was really for me, so I can take a photo of it. You can just like put them as below each other, like they're all fully seen. but basically, so you pull the same 2 cards from the same 2 decks, I mean, and at a full moon, and basically the question is, what are you seeing clearly now? And the sort of the tarot part here is the storyline, but really, I mean, I wouldn't stick with that. Usually the oracle part is like the energies. This is all a major, these are epic myths and storylines. That energy or not, they're all full of energies of that kind, whatever their story is. So I would just read them together. I personally wouldn't make a distinction that this is just the energy and this is, but by all means, whatever works for you. So that's the full moon. And then when you get to the last quarter moon, this is where at that stage, like at the full moon, things have become, you're clear, and often, what's been hiding, it's now clear, and you might not like what you see, or you might actually be even extra happy. And then from that phase up until the last quarter moon, you're kind of adjusting. You're now either excitedly sharing and everyone's loving what's come to light, or some stuff not, or either way, as you're kind of moving towards the last quarter moon, you're in a phase of like, okay, this has been great, I love it, but actually time to do something else. Or this has been great, but these other parts, not really. I thought they were going to be great, but no, they're not working for me. So you're changing basically direction. Essentially, at the last quarter moon, you're changing direction. And all these are kind of pivot points. You pivot at each of these points, but this is the most radical one, or most, you abandon stuff at this point. You go away from it, where the other pivoting, you're going toward what more can I do, what other steps can I take to get to the full moon phase. But after the full moon, it's like, okay, now I'm done with this, I'm going away from it, I'm leaving it behind. So that's the kind of energy of the last quarter moon. And then you look at this, and this could be your monthly, essentially these are your kind of monthly spreads, if you like. And I would definitely recommend having a journal where you have these visuals, or at least some kind of, so you have a quick reference to look back on your year. Imagine that, like, get a notebook that has enough, like, pages in there that you can have 12 months worth of these readings, 12 of these readings basically, and just look back. And you can do this forward, but no, I'm kind of like at the time of the moon phase, I'm pulling these cards, and that would be my recommendation. And let me see if there was anything else I wanted to say. So yeah, just a kind of a recap maybe, or just a reminder, or just to go over it. Basically, so all these here, the Justice, the Queen of Cups, the Wheel of Fortune, the Seven of Pentacles are from the Tarot deck, the Mythic Tarot. So you basically look at the book and you include all the either planets or the asteroids. You have and in another sense, you have a chart that looks each month different. And this is in addition to every other kind of, monthly transits. This is your chart of interest for every month. It's different. For every week, more or less, because of whatever asteroids are being brought to your attention. So that's another fascinating and amazing thing about just, working with your chart. And so you pull those ones, and then here you have, so this is Aries, for instance, the first one, the 32 card. And Aries is Temperance. Okay, so you don't have a Temperance in this particular spread. But if you did, you would have two, or if you had a magician, so that you would have an Iris, a female magician, essentially Hermes or Mercury, and you'd have a Hermes, but you don't have one here, but that's neither here nor there. And then this is a Fool archetype, so the 30 card, this is Dionysos. So that's an interesting, so it's kind of like a Major Arcana card, but it's not, meaning it's Dionysos as in, yeah, you get my kind of, so you play with all these, like, there is so much complexity. And that, to me, I love complexity. I love mazes. I love kind of like, almost like a detective. You're like a detective with your chart. This is a fascinating one. In fact, I will even also link for this. So Atlas is actually a comet. So it's not, at least not I have not found it to be an asteroid that has an ID that you can find in your chart. And it's not a planet. If anyone knows any better or differently, please let me know. But all I've found so far is that it's a comet, and it's essentially, actually, let me just get this for you. So the astrologer that wrote an article in astro.com, astrological journal, is Rod Chang. And the article is called Comets in Astrology, Possible Meaning of These Celestial Events. And he offers, it's a fascinating article, in fact. It's just so, I would highly recommend it. Like I said, I'll link it below. But just wanted to read this one paragraph, which I thought it was quite juicy. So he says that how to interpret comets. It's basically, so in this instance, if an Atlas card comes up, this would be how I would read it. So he says, I would like to suggest the comets symbolize frozen issues that ignite and grab attention, releasing from the abyss of our consciousness such suppressed emotions as fear and horror. So it's, okay, maybe a bit too dramatic even for my my kind of whatever affinities, but probably not. Anyway, but yeah, so it's basically something that has been frozen and it's being reignited now. So you kind of, if you froze it in time, I would take that to be, and it's kind of been, for some reason now it's being reheated and and it's, you know, pummeling fast to possibly, you know, cause some kind of destruction, kind of like a Tau moment in a way. But because it's coming, you know, it's coming. Comet is like, I don't know, was it like, I'm sorry, I'm really now treading waters here. I have no clue about, but dinosaurs were extinct because of something like a meteor has crashed into the earth and then changed everything and whatever. So I would imagine if a comet would hit us, that would be a similar thing. I would imagine, like I said, I'm really out of my depth here, but I'm just going with it. So that's my point. And since you've been alive, certainly me and our families and many before us, many generations before us, this has not happened to us. So my point is, towers happen, comets don't, or far rarely, you know, once in billions of millennia. So there's that, but it's a kind of tower-like potential moment. So there you go. So I'm glad that this atlas came up here. And then you can look at numerology and explore that. So 9 is Hermit, Virgo, and anything else. And in fact, rather here it's Saturn. You see, I'm still in the old sort of traditional way of thinking of the major arcana, but it's Saturn in the Mythic Tarot. So yeah, anyway, you get the gist. And then you get to Psyche here at the end, and Psyche is part of the story of the lovers no, sorry, it's not. It's the whole suit of cups. Sorry, no. It's the whole suit of cups in the Mythic Tarot, though. So you have the Queen of Cups here. Although by the time they come to the court cards, the myth is ended. So it's the numbered cards only. It's the Psyche and Eros. Anyway, you get it. You get the idea of how to do this. Oh, this is just a suggestion, and you may find a far better way of doing it. And that's it. So hopefully this was curious, unusual, and helpful and interesting. That's the interesting I was hoping for. That's what I was going for. My intention was to make this interesting and something different, so you can just keep digging deeper and deeper into your chart. I shall see you next week.